5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Happy Freya. Happy Friday. We have no other than Preston Dennett on the show. Welcome to episode 4. Welcome, Preston. For those of you who don't know, Preston is a UFOlogist. He's a field investigator for MutualUFONetwork, credible source. He's an author of 24 books, and hundreds of articles have been published by him through, let's say, LA Daily News, the LA Times, the Dallas Morning News. You are a fountain of knowledge and information. Thank you so much for being on the show. I am, and many friends are very excited about this interview that we're about to have.
Hey, thanks. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm excited.
Oh, awesome. Me too. Okay, so I was looking through your website and I was like, there's so much. We're just talking earlier, like 35 years of investigative, like reporting, going out to, I'm thinking out with clients and doing, research and all of that. I was like, where do I start? And my first question that came up was, why did you choose, like, what led you to choose a career in UFO investigation? How did that all start for you?
Not voluntarily. It was kind of right. I was not looking for it for sure. I was pretty skeptical of UFOs. And thought, my family was. I have, 5 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
A pretty big family. I thought we were all skeptical. And turned out some of these people within my family and my friends and coworkers actually weren't telling me that they were having encounters.
Okay.
And I heard this report in the news. It was like November 16th, 17th, 1986. About a sighting over Alaska. And I thought, okay, this pilot is obviously lying. I mean, he's got to be lying. Or he's misperceiving, or he's out of his mind. I don't know.
Right.
But I started asking people. And I have to tell you, this is when it hit real hard, hit home. My brother had chased a UFO. I found out he had chased a UFO with his 2 friends. My sister-in-law, she had a sighting of a UFO with her 2 friends over Van Nuys Reserve Air Force Base, and later had an encounter with a gray ET. I'm like,
so
what?
Who had an encounter with the gray?
My sister-in-law.
Wow.
I brought this up at work. People I'd worked with for years. One lady's like, oh yeah, UFOs. Me and my whole family watched this object. It was darting around. And I'm like, And in walks Dorothy. I've worked with Dorothy for years. She's like, oh, one followed me and my sister home from the library. And she says, it's really weird. We live 5 minutes away from the library. Somehow we lost an hour of time.
Wow. Okay, yes. Okay, so I hope you can talk about the time slippage too, because I find that that's kind of part of the accounts as well.
So, but the point is, I found out a lot of people I knew, trusted and loved, were having encounters. So I felt scandalized. I was pretty upset. Yeah,
I love your take on this, Preston.
It wasn't good news, I'm telling you. I was upset. It took taken me a long time to adjust.
I think that's important, though. That's a really cool point that you bring out, is that it's the daily, day-to-day, like people who have seen it. I've seen I've talked about this too, where I've seen something fly, rectangular shape. It just comes in and out of existence. And like, I love how you presented that information, because it just felt like something like so daily, like, yeah, I saw it, like there wasn't any fret to it. You know what I mean? There wasn't so much of like a stigma. It was just like, as soon as like one person says it, I feel, and you would probably know this best, then others will just join in and be like, yeah, I saw it too.
Right. Yeah, I was surprised to find out that most of the people I've interviewed, and this is true if you look through the UFO accounts, weren't alone. They had some witnesses with them. The average sighting has like 2 or 3, 4 witnesses.
Okay.
So that kind of shocked me. And I found out that there was a lot of, misassumptions I had about the phenomena. I was thinking, oh, the stars are too far away. These ETs, they look too much like us. Go away. It's too Star Trek. I don't want to hear about this.
Right.
But there was a lot of evidence. I mean, there was thousands of landing trace cases. These things had been on radar returns.
Okay.
There's very good photographic evidence. The witnesses are outstanding, literally
Yes.
from every level of military downwards. There's police officers, there's astronomers who've seen this stuff.
Okay.
There's all kinds of evidence that I wasn't aware of.
So why the hesitancy then sometimes about talking about these kind of subjects if it almost sounds like so mainstream from all levels, as you said, of government and officials and all this, like from all levels of witnesses and sightings and even making first contact with other extraterrestrial beings or star nation of beings that live among our stars. Like, how is this? Why is there a bit of a disconnect? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to figure out. I think there's many layers to it.
Okay.
And I got into this phenomenon thinking, oh wow, this is very interesting. This is probably true. I pretty soon into investigation, I realized this is a real phenomena. Apparently, UFOs, ETs are visiting our planet. And then there's layers to it. Turns out there is a government cover-up. It's demonstrable. It's not speculation. We've proven this through the Freedom of Information Act. With documents released from the Air Force, the NSA, CIA, FBI, all the intelligence agencies have taken this subject very seriously and have spent a lot of money researching it and, in fact, sort of ridiculing it and debunking it through like Project Blue Book, which is the Air Force's study project officially for UFOs. Turned out really to be nothing more than a publicity stunt to sort of get the Air Force out of the UFO business while the real studies are being carried on in secret. Now, this is still a very sensitive subject within our military. And that's one of the reasons there's a disconnect, because there's a lot of sort of powerful forces trying to suppress the information.
How do you dismantle that then, Preston?
Through podcasts like this. I think the UFOs themselves have sort of an agenda of publicizing their presence.
I feel that too.
Right? They're not officially landing, but I mean, they did hover over the White House in 1954, 56, I believe, 52, around there. They regularly appear over schools. I've got this new book out here, and 100 schoolyard.
What's the title of the book?
Schoolyard UFO encounters. And the reason I bring that up is because it's freaking me out. This is my latest UFO sort of research project. And I heard about these cases of UFOs hovering over schoolyards. And being witnessed by all the students. I found 100 cases all across the world, stretching way back. It's this sort of behavior.
So this is outside of US as well, correct? Sorry.
Oh yeah. This is the sort of behavior that is called what investigators call a display, like the Phoenix lights in Arizona.
Yes, I've heard it. Could you speak on that a bit? That's a big case.
Yeah, there's these huge cases. In 1996 in Phoenix, Arizona, thousands of people saw this very large craft, half mile wide, a mile wide, about 3,000 feet up, maybe lower, 1,000, move over the city of Phoenix for over about a period of an hour. People saw this thing. There was apparently two flyovers. It caused a big to-do. Luke Air Force Base, right next to Phoenix, went on lockdown. They're launching planes after this thing. They released conflicting statements. There was a whole big cover-up of this incident. But they couldn't cover it up. There was photographs. There's moving film and thousands of witnesses.
I know, not even hundreds, like thousands of. There's many that saw this.
Yeah. So
fly ahead.
This is the sort of UFO behavior where we see, which kind of points to me that they're trying to get their presence known to us without overtly landing and sort of like freaking everybody out.
I think I agree with you, Preston. I feel like the freaking everybody out. I think they don't want to do that. Right. It's not about the trying to freak out. It's about, it's going into disclosure, right? And that and then we're talking about the cover-ups, and there are people in the disclosure movement that are saying, hey, the government has to provide the disclosure, leaking of documents and things like that, and at least saying that that these spacecrafts and beings exist and all this thing. And I think there's almost another movement saying disclosure can come through the authentic voices and the investigators and the researchers and the podcasters and people who come out as eyewitnesses and saying, yes, they do exist. Yes, these are, my experiences and they've been pleasant or they've been, we'll talk about some of those things too. But like, there is this push, and there's definitely, I can energetically even feel it on a planet that Earth is definitely part of a larger system that's already pre-existing, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, I feel like, what's happening is really unprecedented in human history. We've got this huge wave of sightings, which began around 1947 with the modern age of UFOs and the nuclear age. Something happened to bring these objects in very large numbers. They've been with us for thousands of years, forever. We've got evidence of that in hieroglyphics, medieval paintings, Renaissance paintings, petroglyphs, Egyptian. It goes way back, all over the place. But what's happening now is apparently never happened before. We've got these giant waves of sightings, and I feel like when an idea's time has come, nothing can stop it. And
I love that.
You know what I mean?
I love that. Say that again. That was so good.
Yeah.
Expand on that.
It's like calculus was invented simultaneously, or pottery, and a bunch of different human inventions all came at once. The idea of evolution and all these ideas that flood into our human consciousness, sort of, you can't stop them because that's the idea's time to manifest.
Feel that.
Like the near-death movement in the 1980s. That was all the rage. Everyone was talking about that. Yeah, now we're seeing a lot of the interest in disclosure. And our Air Force is coming clean on some, recently have made some really positive statements.
What are the positive statements that you could touch upon?
Yeah, there was recently a Pentagon disclosure where a bunch of former Pentagon officials released information, talked about sightings. There was footage. There was the Tic Tac incident off here in Southern California involving underwater UFO, which I found really interesting because I've done a bunch of research into that.
Can you talk on that? I know I have that. That was one of my questions. Was like, that's one of your books as well. Underwater. I think it's actually called Underwater UFOs, correct? Yeah, underwater UFO bases.
Right.
Can you touch on that? Like, I would like, and it's under California. Like, please speak on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started out doing research. I'm like collecting cases, right? Talking to people who've been taken on board and just researching everything I can find out about this phenomenon. And I started to get all these cases of objects coming in and out of the water off the coast here of Southern California. And I wasn't the only one. I looked at the other researchers like Ann Druffel and Robert Stanley and Yvonne Smith and Bill Hamilton, and a bunch of these other researchers were already saying this is a hot spot. And I started putting them all on a map. I'm marking them down.
You're like crime mapping it out.
Right? And I'm like, wow, look at this. This certain section of coastline is just thick with sightings of objects coming in and out of the water. And here was where it got really weird, is some of these sightings were like not one or two objects, or even 10, which is a lot, but 20, 30, 40, 50. There's three or four cases of over 100 objects, which is not super common, I can tell you. It does turn up in UFO literature here and there, but cases involving that many objects are pretty rare. So I knew something was going on in this particular area. And after talking to whistleblowers, Navy guys, pilots, all kinds of residents, of course, I'm convinced there is a good possibility of some sort of undersea UFO base. So
you're saying they're coming out of the water, correct? Sorry, they're not hovering over it. They're coming out of it.
Right, going in and out of the water. Absolutely. Targeting boaters, freaking them out, coming right into the boats. I'm not worried about this phenomenon. I don't think the aliens are coming here to invade our planet. I really don't. I'm
glad you went on record to say that, because I think that's one of the fears, right? I mean, generally, it's kind of like one of the fears is that, you're going to be taken, you're going to be invaded.
Yeah, I came into this phenomenon, as a researcher, pretty horrified. I have to tell you, hearing about abduction accounts and missing time, and people being, examined and probed and so on. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And
Like that's scary shit.
yeah, it was pretty frightening, I have to tell you. And I
Yeah.
certainly talked to people who've had that experience, you know.
Hmm.
And as I sort of built up my caseload and really looked at this objectively, uh,
Hmm.
I started to realize that there was a certain fear slanted to this that was not true. It was
Okay.
pretty much driven by the media, perhaps,
Okay.
I don't know, government. I don't know, because I was getting cases of people being healed, physically healed.
Can you speak on that?
And
Because that's one of your books as well too, is about beings coming from other dimensions. I call them interdimensional beings, IDBs, but coming from other dimensions, and your healing cases. Like what's a really significant case that you discovered there?
yeah, healing and helped. There were many positive cases. I think the first time, I'd read about a few cases, certainly in the literature, but I thought they were really rare until I was talking to this lady who was amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. She has a
Okay.
lot of encounters with gray ETs, which were
Okay.
initially frightening, but became
Yeah.
very, very healing and benevolent. She showed me a UFO twice. Couldn't believe it.
So
Other
you
people,
saw it.
yes,
Nice.
close up, and I mean, I can get into that, but
Okay.
uh, she, I met her and found out she'd had encounters and did these big long interviews with her, and she's like, I did have this experience where I was healed, and
Right.
she had been diagnosed with a cyst and was
Okay.
going to have it, was causing all kinds of problems, pain, and had an MRI. It was going to be surgically removed,
Okay.
and the night before surgery, she had a visitation. And
Right.
I have to tell you, this may sound unusual to people, but I've cataloged, documented about 300 cases of
Wow.
UFO healings, and that's just the
Okay.
tip of the iceberg. And
Okay.
so this is a fairly typical story, actually. About
All right.
25% of people who are taken on board are healed. 10, 25%. Hard to say,
What?
but it's
That's
generally a positive.
shocking. That's kind of shocking though. Like you go on a spacecraft and you experience healing. Like that's, I mean, I know it's
Yeah,
documented through you and like through other books, other sources that talk about this.
yeah, it's very shocking. This is great evidence because the doctors freak out. I mean, I've got before and after photos that are truly amazing.
So it was
And
removed. The cyst was removed.
yeah, the cyst was removed. She goes to the doctor, and the doctors, of course, freaked out. And they
Okay.
have, if they took pre-photos right before surgery, as they always do, and they're like, well, the cyst is gone. We can't find it, but there's, we can tell you had surgery. There's fluid here. That's
Yeah.
only present after she of course denied it. And the doctor's like, well, there's this laser scar in your stomach. Where did that come from? Who did you go to? And she's like, I didn't go
Interesting.
anywhere. And she knew what had
Okay.
happened at
Right.
this point, but she's not going to
But she
say it.
she didn't want to share it with the doctor who's probably skeptical or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Saying another guy had a blood clot on his leg, and he's not going to. It was healed by these sort of human-looking ETs,
Okay.
and he didn't tell his doctor. Another
Can,
guy
can,
had cancer, and
oh wow.
he was healed by this orb of light that came in, and he had already told his doctors he's having experiences, and was, because he had had other medical evidence.
Hmm.
And so they were much more receptive, and he told them, and they're like, "Wow, we did, cancer was gone. They still had to do this operation to remove necrotic tissue, but
Wow.
they had cured his cancer, and it's documented in his file as miraculous healing. They didn't mention aliens or UFOs,
Right.
and I get it, but there is
but
this is great
but
evidence.
but it's shifting, right? I think that dialogue's starting to shift now because I mean, I was just at the planetarium here, and that's like, just, it's open to the public, and even during the presentation, it was said, to the public that to think that it's just us is it's gone beyond rationale. It's now illogical, actually. I want to ask you, because you identified through our conversation a few, like, what type of Star Nation beings, aliens, whatever you want to call them, whatever floats your boat. What types are there that you have identified so far?
Yeah, I'm a believer in extraterrestrials. I'm just going to say it flat out, in beings
Sure.
very much like us, right?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
and I think there are interdimensional beings, and in fact,
Okay.
we are interdimensional. We are.
Yes. That
And
is so good.
right? I mean, we can go out of our body. We will all have an out-of-body experience at some point when we die. But
Yeah.
this is something we actually do every night.
Right.
And there's an interdimensional aspect to all entities, I suspect. And
Okay.
these extraterrestrials can do things that look like magic and
Yes.
have an understanding of interdimensionality that's way beyond ours. Their technology is far beyond ours, a lot of these guys. And
Okay.
about 50% of the people I've talked to,
Mm-hmm.
50, 60%, maybe even a little more. It's hard to say,
Okay.
see some version of the grays.
Okay.
The type that's, we've seen in popular culture with the large head, large, dark, wrapped around eyes.
Pretty much, right? This is like the standard, right, image you have
Yeah.
too.
Here's another.
Yeah, thank you.
image.
There it is. Thank
Right.
you. Yeah, and that's the healing powers. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a standard image of the Greys. Okay.
Yeah, of course, then there's the praying mantis type.
I've heard that too.
And that's fairly common. Next to Greys, I get a
Very
number.
common.
Which is kind of weird to me. And like, okay, we have a praying mantis sort of bug. No, why not, dogs or cats or, what I mean?
Right.
I mean, why pick that animal?
Yeah, but praying mantises are kind of gangster, though. I mean, admit it. Like, they're just so gangster.
And by the way, these things are usually described as 8 feet tall.
They're tall, right? Yes.
7, 8 feet tall, 9, even, upwards of that.
Yes.
And I know how this sounds to people who are like skeptical, but I dare you, if anyone out there is skeptical, ask your family, friends, and coworkers, people you love and trust.
It's true.
And I think you'll get a shock.
I really appreciate that message, because that's true. That's how I learn as well, is through families or friends, and that's where it's like, oh, I've seen that. I was in the forest. It's actually quite common.
Yeah. Turns out, J. Allen Hynek, who kind of spearheaded UFO research in a way, he was one of the first scientists to look into this. He was part of Project Blue Book and kind of defected from it and said, they're not doing real research. And he said about 1 in 40 people have been on board a UFO.
1 in 40.
Yes. And I'm like, no, there's just no way. Because I knew 40 people. I mean, we all probably know, about that fairly well, right? Yeah. Thought, and that's when I dug into my research, and I'm like, I'm asking everybody, and I didn't have to ask 40 people. Yes. And I wrote an article for the MUFON Journal, called 1 in 40, which I, did sort of a survey, and I surveyed all the major researchers, and I said, yeah, probably this might be true, because this is what all the researchers are saying. About 1 year later, the Roper poll came out. The Roper does surveys, right? The Roper.
Okay, I was just going to ask, what is that? But you just explained it.
Yeah, they do formal surveys on a variety of topics and decided to tackle UFOs and found 1 in 50 people show all the markers of being UFO abductees.
Okay.
So it was very timely. The editor of the MUFON Journal wrote me back. He's like, boy, look at that. You predicted it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think there's an epidemic. I think this is a lot more common. I think right now, someone's seeing a UFO right now. And I
love that.
You know how I know this? Because we have UFO reporting centers, Newfork and MUFON, and they're receiving 20, 30 reports a day. And we know as researchers that 1 in 10 people maybe report their sighting. Probably a lot less than that, 1 in 100, if I'm going to be honest. But let's say
are those organizations U.S. based?
Yes.
Are they like non? Okay.
Those are both U.S. based. There's ones all over the world. So we can safely say that the 40 encounters reported per day are just the tip of the iceberg. It's probably closer to 400 per day.
All right, I see what you mean.
So that means if you space that out over time, I mean, pretty much every couple of minutes, someone is having an encounter, right?
That's true.
At all times, 400 per day.
Yeah. And you're talking strictly numbers, like that. It doesn't involve any bias or anything like that. It's talking about objective sightings that are being investigated, being reported.
Yeah, statistical analysis.
Yeah, statistical analysis, right, is definitely there, and obviously the qualitative research that you do to do these case studies and go out on the field and interview people who are brave to talk about this.
What I found is that UFOs are real.
Yeah.
abductions or being taken on board is
Okay.
a real thing, and
Okay.
it's not what the behavior of the ETs falls under the same umbrella as human behavior, honestly.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, these abductions can be scary, but they're never trying to intentionally hurt people. We don't get accounts of sadism. They're not murdering people. Their behavior is actually more benevolent than humans in that regard, certainly.
Okay.
And what happens when someone, when it's amazing. 'Cause I'm analyzing this. I'm like, this is equally divided between men and women, people of all ages. It's all over the world. It's a universal phenomena. People are taken being on board UFOs. The single most common thing that happens is being physically examined. Healings are relatively, I don't want to say common, but consistently reported.
Okay.
People report being taken to the engine room. They're often told how this object flies or works.
Okay.
Yeah. This is not uncommon. And this is sort of a message about a alternative energy, which was one of their main
or like
messages.
Free energy.
Yeah. It's one of their main messages to humanity. Don't use fossil fuels. There's other forms of energy. Here's how we do it. Over and over and over and over again. The really main message, and this is very common. I'm going to say, gosh, half the people I've talked to have gotten any message at all from the ETs is this. It's warnings of some kind, environmentally, usually. Like warnings of nuclear proliferation, warnings about pollution, warnings about our warlike and aggressive ways, or greed, or hurricanes and things like this, natural disasters.
Natural disasters, yeah.
Hear it all the time. And third to that, these are what ETs are talking about, and this is why I'm hopeful, because these are great messages.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say they're very empowering messages, especially free energy, which would probably collapse a lot of industries.
The ETs, their main agenda seems to be sort of the uplifting of humanity, as far as I can tell, because they're trying to stop us from using fossil fuels, get us onto alternative energy sources, warn us about the environment. They're very concerned about the earth. And thirdly, it's all really about healing and spirituality. And this
I feel that too. I can,
very common. People who are having very extensive experiences, by and large, have a lot of psychic experiences. They are transformed in some way spiritually. They come away from their experiences, and I see this again and again, with a very strong interest in hands-on healing, or Reiki, or psychic healing, or healing in general. Or saving animals, or dowsing, or channeling. That comes up quite a bit. Psychic reading. Things like this. One guy
intuition, empathy, super huge. Feeling people's feelings, energies, and what's going on in their,
Auric readings, past lives.
That's coming up a lot.
Out of body and astral travel, which to me is like my baby. I love that. But this kind of hit me at the same time. Out of body research. And
I want to talk about that, because I wrote a little bit about I call it astral projection and astral traveling. Can you talk to me, because I love it too. Can you talk about like your experience with that, because you practice that as well, right? Do you head out and meet, like sometimes I'll go and I'll, like my great grandma had these experiences where she would astral travel, and she would tell her family that she's doing it, and she would take like one breath every 15 minutes, right? Because she would project her consciousness elsewhere, and she would come back into her body. I mean, she's still there, but she would come back, and then she would describe like all these civilizations and stuff. I mean, I do that too. Like I could walk down the street, and that I get a different reality bubble where I can almost put my hand into their reality, and I see like these benevolent beings, like, like of different cultures. I'm like, I mean, I want to hear your experience of that, because I love hearing more stories about that. I think it's a superpower.
Yeah, it's amazing. We all have superpowers.
Yes.
It's absolutely true. We're actually projecting down into the physical plane to a lower vibration. Our real home is on the other side. That's where we come from. So astral projection is kind of a misnomer in a way. We're not really projecting away from ourselves. We're projecting towards ourselves, our
Mhm.
true selves, in a weird way. I just want to make that point.
No, that's
Uh,
good.
but yeah, this is something I got very into. I started researching UFOs in 1986. It was actually
Yes.
like 1984. My mom died. I was 19 years old. It was real hard, and it
Mhm.
sort of opened me up a little bit. And I started having
Mhm.
dreams. I got interested in lucid dreaming and picked up a book about out of body experiences, which had
Mhm.
exercises on how to do it. Right? And I'm like, okay, this is by Robert Monroe, Far Journeys,
Okay.
I think it was called, or Out of Body,
Okay.
something like that. And
Okay.
I'm like, all right, let's try it. I was skeptical, but it worked. It didn't have to,
Mhm.
it took about a month of just sort of relaxing and meditating and doing these sort of visualizations and popped out of my body. First time I thought I died. It was terrifying. Uh,
Okay.
the second time it was so amazing, and
Okay.
started having these sort of 5-second out of body experiences for about a year until I was able to lengthen it up to a minute or two and longer, but really worked hard at it to the point where I was able to meet deceased loved ones, learn about
Yeah,
past.
that's okay. Okay, that's
Yeah,
what happens. Yeah.
I met my mom. She took me on a tour. It was amazing. Uh,
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Pretty much everyone who's died that I'm close to, at some point you can go and meet them, including
Yes.
including pets, which is awesome.
Yes.
Right? And then you can go to healing temples. You can learn about your past lives. You can go to
Mhm.
you've heard of the Akashic Library, the Akashic.
Yes. Please talk more about that if you can.
Oh man, so that's supposed to like a really high level. I'm like, well, I'm gonna give it a try, because what
Okay.
my whole sort of MO was I'd read about it. I'm like, well, if they can do it, so can I. This is a natural,
Yeah, I agree.
right?
I do. I believe it's an innate natural ability. Everybody has the ability to do this.
Absolutely. That's what I've come to believe, that we actually all do it every night. And it's so
Okay.
amazing because on the other side, you can fly. That's so fun. You can walk through walls. It's amazing. You can
Yes.
you can telepathy,
Yeah.
telekinesis,
Yes.
healing. You
Yes.
you rescue lost soul. I mean, it's just crazy. It's like discovering this sort of movie or video game or virtual
It's like
reality.
we're discovering fire again for the
Yeah.
second time. It was a quote, like, it's like that kind of discovery. Like you just said earlier in the conversation, there are like discoveries we haven't even like tapped into yet.
It's amazing. It's a whole new world, and I can't recommend it enough. Everyone's got to try it. It's super. It's
And
as safe as sleeping. In fact,
yes.
I get this. I've documented 20 cases, or actually
Okay.
much more than that. People who've been
Okay.
physically healed as a
Yeah.
result of out-of-body travel. Physically healed of cuts and chronic liver disease, sarcoidosis, and all kinds of conditions. Muscular dystrophy, I think, was one of them. Uh,
Wow.
so this is a very healing experience,
This is powerful information. I
and
mean,
it's
like you
so
said, every case and people are different in how they, how, and again, I encourage everybody listening in to keep an open mind, curiosity, have a sense of excitement that Preston and I do with all, we're like, hey, you know what? Like, try these things. If you resonate with information, give it a go. Right. And thank you for, doing what you do to provide like some of these empowering stories that people come out with. Like, that's incredible, Preston. I mean, I'm gonna swear it's fucking incredible.
yeah. I mean, the out of body stuff. I can't tell you how much that changed my life for the better. I can't recommend
Okay.
it enough, and it's so easy. Really,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of remembering what goes on at night. So if you keep your dream journal, that you're already ahead of the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Try to become aware in your dreams. There's various ways you can do that. Look for dream cues. If you go throughout the day asking yourself this question, am I
Yeah.
dreaming right now? And look around for anything that might indicate it, uh, what will happen is you'll do that at night. And this will wake you up in your dream state. It
That's
works
your cue.
magic.
That's your
Yeah,
that's your uh that's your inception top, that the spinning top, right? Which is
yeah,
where he brings it into the dream state to say, okay, well, cuz he heads in. I call it IRD, interdimensional like you're receptively dreaming like parallel realities, or like you said, past lives. Like I get that too. I blog about it as well. It's amazing. Like I've even visited places where there was like they're going under construction, and then I went back and the house is 3/4 built. Like it's
Yeah.
just.
I think that's one of the things. When you start having these experiences, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dreaming. These must be dreams. But then
Yeah.
you go somewhere to prove it, and you can't,
Yes.
and you do, and you're like, wow, that's the first thing I did. I was like, all right, this could be a dream. I don't think it is. It's obviously not. I mean,
Okay.
but I have to prove it.
Yeah.
And I was able to visit a location out of body near my home that I hadn't
Okay.
been to,
Okay.
and I went there. It's like under this road, an overpass over this little sort of cement river. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, there it is. I mean, and it looked exactly like I'd seen out of body. So I'm
So
like, all
that's
right.
out of. Do people call that remote viewing as well? Is there a difference between the two?
There's a difference. I think they're
Okay.
related. Remote viewing is basically you're doing it while you're sitting there, you're conscious, and it's sort of sending out perhaps a piece of yourself. I don't think
Yeah,
it's
you're
like the whole,
projecting it out.
or your awareness
Yes.
and getting impressions. It's very effective.
Yeah.
And it's a real phenomena, but I think astral travel is different in that.
Astral travel is totally different. It's like there's a very spiritual component to that.
Yeah, we all have a dream body, or it's also called the desire body, because this is
Okay.
where all your emotions are stored. So you go
Okay.
the other side, and it can be very emotional for people. It can be very exciting or very scary, or you might get voracious appetites for food or water or sex even, or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is sort of like the hungry ghost phenomena you may have heard of, or
Okay.
people
I
who are
haven't heard of that.
people who are trapped earthbound for some reason because they're
Okay.
full of desires, or hooked or addicted.
So you're
or
talking
some,
about transcending those desires
right. And so when you
or
go out of body,
densities.
yeah, you pop out into the heavenly realms, I call them. I'm not really a religious person.
Right.
My parents sort of pulled away from the church because they had a lot of questions.
Okay.
And they weren't being answered. And so I wasn't raised that way.
Okay.
And perhaps as a result, that's why I became really spiritual. And the other side is very, I mean, I don't know what else to call it, but like the heavenly realms, because it's so darn beautiful. It is so beautiful.
What
Oh.
I you feel it in your heart space.
Yeah, because the air sparkles, and everything is made of light, and you can't be in a bad mood. You can give it a try, I dare you, but it won't work because there's this loving energy around you, and it's just like Earth, but just gorgeous. I mean, it's very hard to describe how green the leaves are, and how red.
There's like there's a vibrancy to it.
Yeah.
Some people describe that like as when you raise your vibration, and even with channeling and you connect with higher realms or higher dimensional beings or aliens or extraterrestrials or whatever you want to call them, your perspective starts to change. Like I've experienced too, where there's more vibrancy. Even when you eat, things just taste like it's like it almost feels like this is the out of body experience. This reality we live in, which a lot of extraterrestrials and Star Nation beings talk about, bringing in new concepts of metaphysics and how we understand our reality, and also empowering us that we're creators of our own reality, that we have the ability to change. We have the power to change that. There aren't limiting beliefs in their ways, but in ours, in the human world, it's there.
Yeah, the whole out of body thing really kind of made me realize that that's the real world. That's where reality actually exists, and this is sort of a dream in a weird way. I mean, it's kind of, and what I found is often I'd come away from these out of body experiences and I'd have dreams which came true, or precognition, and
That's so crazy. Cool.
Oh, it's so bizarre, and I love it when it happens, because suddenly you'll be walking along and you're like, oh gosh, I dreamt this. And the world, the physical world, takes on this very dreamlike appearance because you're actually living your dream.
Oh, I love that. I love that message, though.
Yeah, and I call it kind of waking lucidity, because what happens is you'll be dreaming and suddenly you'll become lucid in the dream state, and you're like, wow, and you're like, I'm awake in my dream, and then you can kind of project from there into the out-of-body experience, and sort of precognition is the sort of flip end of that. If you know what I mean, because you're waking up but you're already awake and you're on the physical world, and the world is becoming more dream. It's hard to describe.
It's hard to describe. I know what you mean. I feel like, and I've heard like other people, like the channeling community, spiritual community, talk about, as you raise your vibration up to those, those records, the Hall of Records, and other star nations or visiting constellations and beings and civilizations, we bring that message back down, like at our root chakra, and like talk about it here and now to uplift one another, to show compassion, to show kindness, to show support, to be non-judgmental, and to be unconditional in our love, right? And I know some people, and I have interviewed other scientists, and even they, it sounds kind of, like, oh, and all these, like that kind of, but it is what it is. I mean, it's not like, why is it so fluffy to talk about love or to talk about compassion or to give understanding? Why is there, there shouldn't be some sort of like, around that, like,
no, I so agree. Love is the answer.
Yes.
It will solve all our problems. And in fact, Betty Andreasson is a very well-known UFO abductee from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And the Greys told her, and this is a direct quote, "Love is the answer for humankind." And I love that message because it's so true.
That needs to be a bumper sticker.
Right? I mean, we have a number of problems right now with, greed and corruption and device.
It's there. I mean, it keeps people up at night sometimes. Like sometimes, and I talk to random strangers, they're like, the environment and everything like this, it almost feels disempowering or disenfranchising. And what I like to do, what I hope to like to do with you and other guests, is to say, hey, no, we're empowered. We have freedoms, we have rights, we have civil liberties. We have the power to choose, and we can change this.
Yeah, we are the real rulers of the world.
Yeah.
Is the people. It's us.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have the responsibility, I think, to, treat our planet correctly. And it's the number one message from ETs, and it doesn't matter which ET we're talking about, by the way, or if you're talking about the contactee era from the 1950s, or Greys, or praying mantids, or human-looking ETs, or strange humanoids. Their number one message is about the planet.
Okay. And, because that planet is not, we're not just isolated floating around here without neighbors, or star nations or other beings who are part of it. I mean, the message that we get is that we're all connected. Again, we're all connected. So whatever happens here on Earth is going to be pulsated or transmuted to other star systems. And it's like, hey, there's got to be some sort of interference here, because it's like, if you fuck this up, it's going to affect other regions.
Yeah, this sort of theme turns up in a number of cases, particularly like with our nuclear experimentation is reportedly, or allegedly causing havoc in far places. And all our negativity and thought forms, I've talked to experiencers who've said this, are creating thought forms all around our planet, negative thought forms, and just all this chaos. And that's one of the reasons I think that the ETs are here in large numbers. They're very interested in all things human.
I feel that.
They love us. There's something about us they find very fascinating. I think it's partially because of our emotions, our ability to feel seems like off the charts compared to a lot of the beings out there.
Yes, I feel that too. That there's the range of emotions that humans feel are different than the biology of other Star Nation beings that may have a different range of emotions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, certainly with the Greys, there are Greys who are reported to be pretty much emotionless. And I have to tell you, that does turn up, but I know of people who have the emotional range of a Grey. I do.
Okay.
They're just not, they're not giggly people. They're not, they don't cry. A lot of men have a very narrow emotional range.
Okay. But that might be conditioning and programming as well.
Right. I think it is.
Right.
And we have Greys who are absolutely loving, and do tell jokes and things like this.
Okay.
But by and large, no, they seem to have a more narrow emotional range than the average human.
Yeah, I feel that too sometimes, or maybe a bit more intellectual and cognitive.
The Greys that we're seeing, a lot of them are like doctors, or they're scientists, or they're doing a job. So maybe we're not meeting the average tourist gray. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see. I think there's as much diversity as there is within the human race, as there is within the grays and personalities and things like that too. I think that's important to share as well. This is supposed to only be a half an hour. We're on 50 minutes, Preston.
Oh, I'm
So,
sorry.
no, this is awesome. This is awesome because I feel like I could talk to you forever. I guess the general message is I'm going to ask two questions here, but I do feel like, there are first contact specialists being made in the sense that people, some people call it abductions. I kind of want to call it first contact. I don't think it involves much physical contact, but it's more in the sense of dissemination of information and to empower, individuals and people to make better informed decisions about our planet. I think we're also visitors here as well. But in that, and I do feel like the Earth is starting to lift her veil and that we're starting to open up to the Star Nation system that we're a part of. And it's like, wow, like you just said, the technology, what about trade agreements, new careers? Like, could you, sitting down with like a 1,000-year-old being that's experienced all these stars, like there's so many new opportunities that can come if we have the courage to believe and open our eyes and open it with curiosity instead of fear. What's your message that you have for the public now and today? Like, what do you want to send out to the world as your message?
Yeah, I thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think that UFOs are real. They're not going to go away. They're nothing to be afraid of. They're people just like us for the most part, but different.
Yeah.
I think their agenda is largely positive. I've told you the three main messages they talk about. I think that this subject will come out. There will be, open official contact. There's going to be open. There's going to be disclosure, a day of official disclosure as well. And I think those two.
Do you believe that's coming?
I do. I think it might take years and years. I don't know, but that's what we're trending towards. And I think it will happen. And I think we need it because when this all comes out, as it will, this will solve a lot of our problems. We have an energy crisis. We have an economic crisis. We have an environmental crisis.
Yeah, political.
This will all be solved through the release of the ET technology, which we have. Roswell is a real thing. We have numerous crashed UFOs. We have the ET technology. This has been pretty much proven through the testimony of hundreds of whistleblowers. We know this.
Yes. Yeah.
So this will change our planet. I think we're in for some major changes. Yeah, I think the veil is lifting. That's perhaps one of the reasons ETs are so interested in our planet is the vibration is going up. Something momentous is going to happen. That's the very strong message from experiencers. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you.
Sorry we went over.
This is so much fun. Like, I want to keep going. Like, I haven't even stopped. Like, there's so many questions to ask Preston, seriously. But hold up your books again, please, if you can. And what's going on next for you? Where are you headed to next? What do you want to talk about? Where are you going? There you go.
This is my latest book. I'm super excited about it. This is probably one of my more successful books. And which talks about 10 people who've had very close encounters. I'm working on another one just like that right now. And it's amazing. I think it's going to shock people, even in the UFO community.
Can you say the title?
I think it's tentatively going to be called Onboard UFO Encounters. 15 true accounts. And each chapter focuses.
Looking forward to that.
Each chapter focuses on one person who's been taken on board a craft, and it's amazing. Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This is insane. This is what we call a lit conversation. I would implore everybody to reach out. Preston, I'll put your website below if you want to contact Preston. There he is. Fountain of knowledge of youth and information sources. And my nickname for him is Smiles because he's all smiles and he's super happy. This is such an uplifting conversation for me, and I learned a lot from you today. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being on this planet at this pivotal time. Let's get this done.
Hey, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.